Okay, how do we start this? I guess my name is... Huh, I don't have a name yet. Sorry about the sloppiness, he sort of just came into existence. Kinda. I'm also perplexed by this void I'm in. I don't really know where I am, but I do know some stuff. You know what? Screw it. My name is unimportant. But let's talk about something you will probably care about. How to write a believable world in the urban fantasy genre. The most important things about making a fantasy world is that the audience believes in it in some way. Or buys into it if you want to be a creepy card dealer type about it. It's writing 101. Make the audience buy the lie. Making a fantasy world is about selling the audience to the idea of a fake world and making them learn to enjoy it or make them want to learn more about it. It can be very hard to make an audience buy into certain concept for a story, or more importantly, your world. Some things are easier than others nowadays. Magic, for example, is easy enough to have in a story if it fits the setting, but even then, the questions can arise from its use. Usually how it works, what it can do, who has it, and then you have the specific questions that might come from subgenres or more specific kinds of stories. Urban fantasy is a genre of fantasy where the mystical is in a familiar setting, mostly an urban area. Typically in the present, though sadly time has a nasty habit of moving forward, so present is relative here. I mean, Wizard of Oz used to be present when it was written. And well, that was 100 years ago, so how familiar is that old farm on Kansas nowadays? The thing about urban fantasy is that there's a special quirk about it nowadays. One that could be very perplexing for modern writers to get their minds around, or even for audiences to accept. The secret world. The secret world is a trope where all magic is hidden from normal people and is underneath society, underneath a secret society. The secret world. This is not a requirement for any of the fantasy genres or subgenres. This is mostly an urban fantasy thing, but some urban fantasy is an alternative world rather than our world but with magic. It is assumed unless otherwise though. It's practically the norm for urban fantasy targeted at younger audiences, especially. The problem isn't the use of this concept per se. Even the most overused trope is fine if you can make it your own. The problem is that the audience will likely tear it apart at its foundations. Why? Well, this is the era of rampant cynicism and literalism. Exactly how many think pieces are there about how the Disney remakes overly explain the movies they are based on? Just look at what they did to Beauty and the Beast, my beautiful fluffy boy. Ahem. In my opinion, it's just what happens when a trope is used enough in stories. People want variety, even in their tropes. Again, time has a habit of not going back, so we can't go back to the before time. Ah, before time, you nebulous pit of nostalgia. The only thing that tells me that the past was better even when I'm talking out my ass. Destroying the concept of everything was better in the past aside, the fact that the concept has been used enough does mean you must learn from what has come before to make your own ideas, especially when you're dealing with something like the secret world. Here are two prime examples of the secret world that you can use for your own story. Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, which both have a secret world, but both take a wildly different approach to it that you can borrow for your own story if you're not making your own rules. There are other examples, but these are basically the templates that everyone else uses. Fantasy in general has a nasty habit of copying each other for ideas. I mean, how many times can you remember it where a person explains how magic works in their world and it feels like you just put the force in and it would be word for word? I say that I only know one of these very well though, and mainly rely on word of mouth for one of them. But even then, these provide broad examples of the secret world concept that most stories use. In the Harry Potter world, magic is secret from normal people. In the books and extra media, it is mentioned that charms prevent normal people from seeing things like Hogwarts and other areas wizards live mostly. I mention the charms because as far as the audience is led to believe in things such as, for example, the movies, the only reason that the magical world hasn't been revealed is because of luck. However dumb that luck may be is dependent on the current story. My favorite dumb moment is the part of Fantastic Beasts, the first movie, is where they mix the forgetting juice with the rain because of a thunderbird. Oh boy, that was stupid on many levels. The luck thing is because any magical world that needs the people in it to keep it secret will only be secret until it's inconvenient. And then the Fantastic Beasts 2 movie happened, and suddenly that became worse with a certain bit of knowledge. That the Wizarding World not only did nothing in the World Wars, but also had an advance warning about the second one. Yeah, I guess spoilers, but yeah, the villain's big plan is to kill non-magic humans before they can World War II, I guess? Basically stop Hitler. That's the big plan of Grindelwald, which seems reasonable in comparison to the actual World War II. It sucks even worse when you realize JK specifically said there are Jewish wizards. Sure, she made that one on the spot, so she would feel better about having a white majority cast in the book written in the early to mid 2000s. Sure, Jewish wizards did nothing to stop Hitler while he was just rampaging through Europe asking for their heads. Sure, I'll believe that. And for everyone else, think about that in case the whole magical world being kept secret by teenagers never telling their friends in the normal world was too realistic for you. Also, that's a thing you're probably going to be thinking about when you reread the books again. How a bunch of teenagers somehow managed not to let the secret out at some point. Now let's count the ways they would probably do so. Including but not limited to, looking cool for their friends, showing off to their normal friends, becoming a magical bully, becoming a magical tyrant, becoming richer by abusing the broken magic system, using magic to help the muggles and their families, using magic to affect politics, and a whole list of so many other horrible things I can't go into. Okay, one can say that I'm harping on this, but when the only reason the magical world isn't revealed is the fact that the ministry asked teenagers and children not to say anything about their super cool magic parents to their normal ass friends. You know, I want you to think about the last time someone from a government agency told people to do something and they did it with no problem. Go on. I'll wait. It's 2020. The government said plenty of things. How many things did people actually listen to? Yeah, I'm giving it 6 months, max. The only real reason this works for the plots of Harry Potter is because it's not really that needed. Plots work whether the secret world is revealed or not, except maybe in the story where Voldemort wins, but that's not really happening. The plot doesn't require the known world to be aware of magic. Honestly though, I might be busting chops, but there is a lesson that needs to be learned from Harry Potter. Our audience will only buy so much. The most common rule for conspiracies, real or fictional, is that the more people involved, the more likely it will be revealed. Also, don't trust teenagers with a secret that actually makes them cooler. That's just good advice all around. Never trust teenagers. Now that covers secret worlds where people actually need to work to keep it secret. Let's talk about the opposite of that. So yeah, maintaining a secret world in a world where you have to physically try to make that secret or make people swear secrecy is very hard to do in a believable sense. But there are other options. Another option could be making it so people can physically see the magical world. It's often called the Weirdness Filter. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians, it's called the Mist. Percy Jackson is often tied to Harry Potter in a number of ways. It's often called a copycat, but it really does its own thing. Though that might be my own biases for mythology talking there. Percy Jackson's world is one where magic itself hides the world. In Percy Jackson, there is this thing called the mist. It keeps normal people from seeing the magical for what it is. Sometimes it's very literal, a mist rolling over a city that prevents them from seeing anything. And sometimes it's just a magical illusion that prevents people from seeing what clearly it's in front of them. Like say a Hydra looking like a Schnauzer. Or say a bartender not noticing that his bar is on fire and he burns to death because he's not noticing it. You might think I pulled that out of my ethereal ass, but that is something that happened in a short story made by the writer's own son. Bartender's just cleaning his glass and then boom, his place goes up in flames because of a firebolt. But because it's magic, you can't see it. It's just dying slowly as the man watches in horror. Not noticing a goddamn thing. By Hades, that guy needs to keep on writing. Anyway, again, the Percy Jackson world avoids the problem of people revealing the magical world by just making it impossible for people to see it, and actually uses that for the story. Whenever possible, I recommend this kind of approach. It sidelines the Harry Potter problem while providing ample reason for the protagonist not to get help, not rely on other people that are not magical, and also makes them live in a normal life in the normal world when the adventure is done. You get the best of both worlds without much issue. Though there are still problems. The amount of people that turn out to be secret demigods is just downright perverse sometimes. Christopher freaking Columbus, demigod. And the question, how can the world stay on the same path it is right now with all this magical assistance and demigods running around, even magicians at some point? Yeah, that needs to be addressed at some point. But it's not nearly as bad as the Wizarding World, and the fact that it runs on an honor system and teenagers keeping secrets for the government. Percy Jackson, you don't get that. No matter if they want to, they can't tell anyone. Maybe the fact that it came out a bit later helped it in that sense. I would also say the greater Percy Jackson universe uses the fact of the secret world to its advantages for its stories and character moments. The bartender's thing from earlier was from a short story collection written by the guy's son. The sister series, Magnus Chase, even had a normal human learn to use the magical world in the more Norse mythology side of things, learning to slowly see it. In the main series, it causes the main female lead, Annabeth, tension between her and her stepmother because she keeps being targeted by magical spiders. I wish I was making this stuff up. Well, more accurately, I wish I was the one who made it up in the first place and profiting from it. Bottom line, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is the new hotness, while Harry Potter is falling faster than JK's credibility on Twitter. Alright, joking aside, in my personal opinion, you're free to disagree. Percy Jackson has the better secret world to me, but you can freely argue that Harry Potter has the better one, or that neither has one that's better than the other, and you can recommend your own. Put down in the comments if you have any urban fantasy stories with a better version of the secret world you want to share. All around, I'm going to enjoy all the Potterheads and new faces the Percy Jackson fandom is going to receive when the show comes out on Disney. Anyway, I'm going to figure out where I am, hopefully. Also going to figure out who I am, but we can discover that together. So, see you next time. Ciao. You know, this video was supposed to come out at New Year's? Yeah, it was supposed to be some big show, New Year, new me, wanting to show off. But it is very hard, even for something like this, which just basically use still images for most of it. But anyway, if you made it this far, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video and want to see more. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Click the bell icon for notifications on my next video. And enjoy your day or midnight. Depends when you watch this. This is the Grand Archive signing off.